Asidi Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tudan Dagi Tenyerme Chiktu Jingi Lu Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Tudan dagi yi ten yerme chiktu jingi lo. Oma muni muni maha muni shakya muni soha. Sangye chodan soge chonam la jancho pardo dane kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam gi drola pinchire sangye drupa reshu Sangye chodan soge chonam la jancho pardo dane kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam gi Drola pinchira sangye drupa resho Sangye chodan soge chonamla Chancho pardo dani Choshe gibe sonamgi Drola pinchira sangye drupa resho In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfection, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. One of the important aspects when we talk about the correct view of reality is the understanding that it's not a matter of having an understanding about something. It's a matter of changing our paradigm. That's why it's quite difficult also. Because it's not just, oh, let's get some knowledge about something that's, oh, how nice, how interesting. Also, it's nice and interesting to understand and to learn. But the actual fact, or the actual path, is to change our own paradigm. In order to do that, the first step that we need to do is to recognize and to be aware that we do live within a paradigm. That we do have our own world view, our own perception of reality. And we live within a paradigm. That's already quite something if we understand that. Because our tendency is that we live within a paradigm, but we think that our paradigm is the actual reality. And anyone that lives in a different paradigm, he's simply wrong. That's how we do normally. So we are not aware that we live within a paradigm. And this is something that creates a lot of other conflicts. So the first step is starting to understand that I am influenced by the culture where I grew up, by the education I received, by many, many aspects that makes me to relate to reality in one specific way. But this is one way of seeing reality. It doesn't mean that this is what reality actually is only. Okay. So there are many ways of seeing the paradigm that we live in. One thing that I really believe is important, even though not so simple, is for us to reflect upon which paradigm do I live in. What are the influences that I have within the paradigm that I live in? And reflecting, I think that in our Western culture, we are mostly influenced by three aspects in our worldview, in our paradigm. We are mostly influenced by the monotheistic religion. We are influenced by the materialistic, mechanicist, scientific so-called view, like Newton's view, which is basically a mechanicist's view of seeing reality. And we are also influenced by a materialistic view, which is coming like the more, how to say, capitalist influence. Okay? So, I believe that mostly we have these three influences. We have the monotheistic, capitalist, and materialistic from like mechanicist view, like from Newton. We can have many other influences also, but this is just generally speaking, when I look at our society, I think these are the three strong points of, let's say, strong pillars of our paradigm. No? It's very interesting also to see that in history, within science, human beings have always been changing the paradigm from time to time. It's very common. Science goes to one point, then it develops and then change paradigm. And in a way or another, some people may like, some people may not like what I'm about to say, but the scientific view is just another paradigm, just as the religion view is another paradigm. That's why it's interesting enough to see that very often the approach that human beings have towards science is the same approach that they have towards religion. It's creating a paradigm. Even if we look between what exists and what don't exist and we follow the scientific view, have we done any research on it ourselves? Do we really understand why and how? Most oftenly not. It's just because someone said and someone did research, so basically we are following something. But the point that I want to reach is not entering into this type of discussion. It's mainly understanding that we live within a paradigm. And it's also interesting to see that our, like say, more spread paradigm is quite outdated, scientifically speaking. If we see the paradigm of the mechanicist view of reality, it's already a long time ago science have seen that world doesn't exist, how Newton described it. But we still look at it in that way, actually. Most of us. For me, one very clear experience about this, how strong is our paradigm. It is, one time I was reading about quantum computer. And I like this type of subjects, and I was reading about it. I saw that, first of all, the normal computer that we use nowadays, it's a binary computer. So basically, it has a system that is 1 and 0, which means exist and don't exist. So all the calculations are basically made on the many different types of, how do you say in English, of the combinations of yes and no's, of exist and don't exist, of ones and zeros. Okay? The quantum computer is supposed to be extremely more fast and powerful because it goes from another process which is not anymore a binary system but a system which they call the qubits. They don't have bytes, but they have qubits. It's a quantum system. What does that mean? I don't know, but more or less what I read, it is the following. Normally, in a normal binary computer, when you have normal bits, you have yes and no. Okay? Two possibilities. In a quantum computer, you have yes, no, yes and no at the same time, and a fourth one that I didn't get it. I read it quite a few times and I could not understand it, okay? So, when I was reading that, I was thinking, okay, I understood what it means by yes and no at the same time. And the words, I get it, but I cannot conceive it. This is showing that my paradigm does not allow me to conceive, exist and don't exist at the same time. The difficulty of quantum physics, for example, is that it requires a change of paradigm. Okay? So, this is just to show how strong is our paradigm within us and how we live within a paradigm. This is what I want really, that it's very important for us to understand. Another example, much more superficial example. Very, very superficial one, but I like it. It's the effect of the pink and the blue, no? I told this story many times. But basically, it's the fact that why pink is a color for girls and blue is the color for boys. If we ask most of us why, our answer would be that's because that's how it is, you know. Blue is for boys and pink is for girls, and that's how it fits, and you don't put a boy in pink, you know. Or vice versa. Maybe not so bad if you put a girl in blue, but don't send a little boy 5 years old to the school in pink. Okay? Why? Basically, it's very simple. 1918 in the United States, in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, what happened was that at the time, it was for the first time the colored cloth was available at a cheap price, affordable price. Until then, the colored cloth was very expensive. So only the very rich people would have clothes for their children in color. So all the children were dressed, most of the children were being dressed in a sort of a cream gray color, white cream, something like that, which was the natural color of the cloth, of the cotton and so on. So, when it became available, they made a marketing, and in the marketing in 1918 they said, pink is a color for boys and blue is a color for girls. Okay? Because they used to say that pink was a stronger color and blue was a more soft color. So pink was for boys, more strong, and blue was for girls, more soft. Okay? Actually, if we look, there are some old pictures and museums of, like in France, like the royal family in France before. They would have like the very rich people before the 1900s. It was very common that the room of the man was pink and the woman was blue. Okay? So anyhow, they followed this. So in 1918, they were selling clothes for people, saying that pink was for boys and blue was for girls. Then what happened is in 1920, they needed to sell more clothes, and people were not used to buy clothes every 6 months, whatever, no? So they inverted it. In 1920, they said, no, it's not like that. Pink is for girls and blue is for boys, and here we are following it almost 100 years later. Here we are, pink for girls and blue for boys. Because someone in the marketing business almost 100 years ago decided like that. And we still follow. So this is just one very superficial example of concepts, of ideas that we stick to our mind. And we think these things are just like that. When actually, it's a worldview, it's a paradigm that we are within. Okay? We can go from very deep level to very superficial things. We live within a worldview. We live within paradigm. I think it's quite clear, right? And the question is not exactly which paradigm is right and which paradigm is wrong. Like, we can go through the paradigm, for example, of a linear life, that the life exists only once and it's linear. That's one paradigm that most of us live in. Or we can go to another paradigm, which is a cyclic paradigm that exists through this process of reincarnation. The question here is not even which paradigm is the more correct, and which is right and which is wrong. The main question for me is, which paradigm is better for me? Which paradigm will bring me a state of more peace and satisfaction and will help me to be a better person and to live in a state with more satisfaction and joy? That's the main thing. No? When you talk about the correct view of reality, there are different ways of seeing the same thing that are correct. And one time I remember a friend of mine was complaining about another person, and then I just gave a different perspective of the same situation. And the person asked me, but which one is the right one? I said, both are right. But you should choose which one is better for you. we have this idea, this is also part of our paradigm, of dividing things into right and wrong. Or if this one is right, all the rest is wrong, and vice versa. So instead, very often, many different ways of seeing the same thing are correct, as long as the bases, the parts, are able to fulfill their characteristics and functions. So what happens is that the point is not in this case if it's right or if it's wrong. It is which one is better for me, which one is more useful for me. So this is more important, okay? So, first step, understand that we live within a paradigm and understand what is our paradigm, okay? This is it's a long process, it's not something easy. But in the moment that we understand that we do live within a paradigm, this already is quite liberating. It can be a bit frightening, because means reality is not as I thought. Okay? And we can really be frightened by it because we may feel that we don't have any place where to really put our foot. It's like nothing real. But it is very beneficial to go through this process, actually. To go through this process of understanding that we live within a paradigm. And then from this, we can understand, okay, let's change our paradigm. Because there is another one that is better. And that's where comes in the correct view of reality. Because the problem is that if we do study a lot about emptiness and the correct view of reality and so on, but we are not aware that we are within a paradigm, we will not use it to change our paradigm. We will just try to integrate that concept within the paradigm that we are already in. And it doesn't work. Okay? So we can just somehow be cheating ourselves for a long time. I don't know if it's clear, this. But so, we need to understand, yes, I am in a paradigm, so I can change this paradigm, we can change the way of experiencing and seeing reality. Okay? How do we actually change a paradigm? Okay. The process that we use here is three steps mostly, which are used in many different practices and in many different teachings, which are the process of listening, comprehending, and meditating. Okay? Because in order to change a paradigm, we need to have both understanding first, and second, we need to have experience. The change of paradigm is not coming out of only understanding. We must have experience. Okay? So, the first step is understanding, and yesterday we went through the meaning of the correct view of reality by making the example of the face on the mirror, the reflection of the face in the mirror. And what we saw was that similar, in the same way that when we see the reflection of our face in the mirror, we are not aware right away that it's a reflection, so it appears to us as being an actual real face. We grasp at it as being an actual real face, and we act and react in accordance to it, as if it was an actual real face. Similar to that, when we look at reality around us, what we see, what we listen, and so on, it appears to us as if it existed independently of the observer, independently of us, as what we see. It appears to us as if it existed autonomously, in an autonomous way, in an independent, objective, ultimate way, intrinsic way. Okay? So, not only it appears to be objective, autonomous, independent, and so on, we grasp at it as if it was in this way. We believe in it in this way. And we act and react in accordance. Okay? This is actually our own ignorance. the way how we grasp to reality as being different from what it is. So, another example that we have here, that the actual text brings us, because the text also is divided into two parts. The how to meditate, how to train ourselves in wisdom during meditation sessions and during post-meditation sessions. So, when it says, the stability has been attained, in part the secret teaching. Consider all phenomena as dreams. Examine the nature of unborn awareness. The remedy itself is relieved in its own place. Place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. This is talking about the meditative state on emptiness. Then the second part says, in the period between sessions, be a creator of illusions. That's how to act and to practice in between meditative sessions to train on wisdom. Okay? So, let's start with the first one. We take the example here to understand also. Yesterday we talked about the example of the reflection of the face in the mirror. Today here we have the example of the dream. It's talking about the same thing. It's just two different metaphors. The metaphor of the dream is also quite clear, and it says like that. When we dream something, let's take for instance, make a nice example. We dream someone gives us a nice gift. Okay? Let's say someone comes and gives us a new car. Whatever, okay? You think about anything you like, whatever thing. Just the car is something material, physical, easy to see. Let's say someone give you a new car. We are dreaming, and in our dream, someone comes and gives us a beautiful new car. And the car is in the front of our house. Then we wake up in the morning, we go out of bed. Is the car there? No. It was just a dream. No, the old example that is given is, we dream that someone that we care for dies. And then we wake up. Is the person dead? No, it's by our side. Okay? So, the point is, the car that we received in the dream, did it exist in the dream? The dream car existed or not? Yes. The dream is real, it's not fake, right? The dream happened. What does not exist is the car of the dream as a real car. If it was a real car, I would have gone out in the morning and there was my new car. Okay? But actually this is not happening. So what is happening here, or the person I dream that someone I love dies, and then when I wake up in the morning, there the person is dead. Okay? Hopefully not. So basically what happens is that what we dream, the dream is real, but is not real in the sense of being something more than a dream. In other words, I dream with a beautiful car that I get as a present. The car of the dream exists, but the car of the dream as a real car doesn't exist. Is it clear this? Okay. But now, when I am dreaming, and I get a new car, am I happy with the present? So in the middle of my dream, I get that someone comes and gives me a nice and beautiful car, and then I go for a ride on the car, and I am so happy, and then someone comes and takes away my car, and then I get angry that the person took away my new car, and then maybe someone scratches my new car in the dream, and then I get angry about that, and then I see the car again, and I get so attached to my new car, and so on. Okay? While I am dreaming, how does that car appear to me? As a real car or just as a car of a dream? As a real car. And I act and react in consequence. Okay? If I am having a dream and suddenly I see a monster coming towards me, do I understand that's just a dream monster? Or I get a fear and I get afraid and I try to protect myself and I run away. Okay? So what happens is that while we dream, because we are not aware that it is a dream, even though it's not real, it appears as if it was real. We grasp at it as if it was real, and we act and react in accordance. Okay? Similar to that, reality does not exist in an inherent, objective, absolute way. Okay? It is interdependent. We saw yesterday with the sound of the bell. No? When I played the bell, yesterday we saw the sound is different. The vibration of the air arriving at us is different. Our ear sense is different. Our sense power is different. Our sense consciousness is different. The value that we attribute, our discernment is different. So all of this makes a different experience for each one of us. So it's different. But still, what happens is that when we see something, when we're listening to something, when we experience reality, we experience it through the value that we attribute to it, through the name that we impute to it. But still, we think that the object is the value that we attribute to it. And if anyone sees differently, he is wrong. Okay? That's how we normally experience reality. Even though we know that reality is subjective, it appears to us as if it was objective. And we grasp at it as being objective, and we act and react in accordance. Okay? Just as when we are dreaming and we don't know that we are dreaming, the dream appears as real, we grasp at it as real, and we act and react in accordance. Okay? What happens if in the middle of a dream we are aware that it's just a dream? Our reactions are the same or they get different? Not necessarily, no. We do not necessarily wake up. What happens when we are aware that we are dreaming? We do not react in the same way. I had maybe one of the strongest experience of this that I have had when I was a very small kid. I don't know how old, maybe I was 8, 9, 10, something like that. And I had a quite high bed. And then because I wanted to make that bed high because it was on the same height of the window, so I could see outside completely. No? Anyhow, I had this high bed so that I could see outside. But for me to go on the bed, I need somehow to jump on it, and to go down, I needed to jump a little bit down. So I had a dream that I went out of the bed, and I went to the corridor, and the corridor there's still in my father's house one stairs that goes down, and then instead of going down the stairs, I jumped. And the sensation in the dream was that I was falling from many floors. And when I was very afraid of it. And when I was about to touch the ground, I woke up. Then as I woke up, I said to myself, oh, that was just a dream. Let's repeat it. So I went to sleep again, and I had exactly the same dream where I stand up from my bed, I go down, and then I would jump knowing it was a dream. And I knew that when I would touch the ground, I would wake up before touching the ground. So was not afraid at all. So I would just jump again, and wow, how nice, then I go down, then I woke up. I say once again, and I repeated for 3, 4, 5 times, I don't remember how many, until I got bored out of it, and then I just slept normally. No? So this was for me a very nice experience, very spontaneous experience of being aware of the dream and being able to choose the dream also. No? But the special aspect also is the fact that when we are aware that it is a dream, even though it appears as real, we know it is not. So we react differently. Okay? Similar to that, what in the text here calls, in the period between sessions, be a creator of illusions. Once we have a direct experience that reality is not objective, even though it appears to us as being objective, we know that it is not, and so we do not react in the same way. Okay? We know that actually it is interdependent, even though it appears to me as it existing in an autonomous, independent, objective way. I know that it is not like that by my own experience, so I do not follow that. It's just like as if I am dreaming, knowing that I am dreaming. Then there is a moment when we wake up. Maybe you have already heard the name for Buddha as the awakened one. No? When we talk about Buddha, the awakened one, it refers also to this aspect that if we take the metaphor of the dream, now for all of us, when we are in the middle of ignorance in samsara, we are dreaming without knowing that we are dreaming, the metaphor. Which means reality appears to us as being of inherent existence. We are not aware of that, and we grasp at such inherent existence, and we act in accordance. Once we get out of samsara, which means once we eliminate ignorance by having a direct, non-conceptual experience of the lack of inherent existence, of emptiness, then when we get out of the meditative state, still reality appears to us as being of inherent existence. But we know that it is not. It's like waking up within the dream, knowing that we are dreaming. Everything still appears as if it was real, but we know it's just a dream. So we do not react in accordance. So that moment is like everything appears to us as if it was totally autonomous and independent, but we know it's not true. So we do not react in the same way. The next level, when reaching enlightenment, becoming a Buddha, is like waking up, because there is no more appearance of inherent existence and no more grasping at inherent existence, both. Okay? We can talk about this a little bit later. So how does this process happen? First step, we need to listen. Listen means we receive the teachings, we read the books, we receive information. When do we know that we have completed the process of listening? When we realize the wisdom of listening. The wisdom of listening, it is, to be more precise, the correct term is a correct assumption of emptiness. A correct assumption, the definition in Tibetan is said, which means the correct assumption is when we are completely sure about something in a correct way, without having had any logical understanding or direct experience about that same subject. So, someone told me that phenomena lack inherent existence, that nothing exists in an objective way as it appears to me, and finally I believe in it. I say, yes, reality is not as objective as it appears to me. Reality is interdependent. It lacks this inherent existence as it appears to me. So once I understand that, and I get it, I don't know exactly how and why, and I have not truly experienced it, but I'm sure that it lacks inherent existence. When we are sure about that, when we have that certainty, that correct assumption, that's when we realized the wisdom of listening. Next step, to realize the wisdom of comprehending. To get the right comprehension, it means that we need to understand it clear. We need to get to a point where the fact that phenomena lack inherent existence is not anymore something that someone else told me, but is actually something that I understand by myself. I have not yet had a true, direct experience about it, but I truly understand it. The technical term that we use is when we develop a valid inferential cognition. Inferential cognition. And inferential cognition, for example, is when we can understand that there is fire behind the house because I see smoke. When you use logic, this is like this because that is like that. I see smoke. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So I see smoke, I know there is fire. I am not seeing the fire with my own eyes, but I know there is fire, and I have no doubt about it. Why? Because I see smoke. Phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Why? Because they are interdependent. And once we get that deeply inside of us, once we have this certainty, then it's when we have realized this so-called valid inferential cognition. Okay? It is, in other words, when we have no any more doubts about the fact that phenomena lack inherent existence because they are interdependent. And it's not something that someone else told us, it's something that it becomes our own deep knowledge. it is still cognition, it's still understanding, it's not experimental. Okay? Third level of practice is when we start actually to meditate upon the lack of inherent existence. Okay? So this will come now to the third level. And here I would like just to explain a little bit what is actually when we talk to meditate on emptiness. I would like first to explain a little bit the meaning of emptiness. And then we go to that, okay? So go back to the Italian first. The third level we enter is we call the practice of meditation. We need to develop the wisdom of meditation. Then we'll explain after what we mean by the wisdom of meditation, how to meditate on emptiness, okay? How do we meditate on the correct view of reality, okay? Very briefly now, without going into many details. This is something that we can take quite long going into many details, but just one idea. First of all, we need to meditate in what is called emptiness. And one aspect that sometimes people may have some doubts, which is quite correct doubt, is that at some point you may ask, but why do I need to have the understanding about emptiness? Wouldn't it be enough just to understand interdependence? Because once I understand that phenomena exist independent of the imputation of the name and the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name, once I understand that everything exists independent of its parts and everything exists independent of the basis and the value that is attributed to it, isn't that enough? Once I understand how things are? Actually not. For a very simple reason. The root of our suffering is not the lack of understanding of interdependence. That's not the root of our suffering. The root of our suffering is the grasping at inherent existence. Which means the root of our suffering is the fact that reality appears to us as if it was of inherent existence. Reality appears to us, reality means everything around us and ourselves also. Everything appears to us as if it was of an autonomous, independent, objective, intrinsic reality. But actually it is not. Okay? So the root of the suffering is the grasping at such inherent existence. We call in Tibetan dak chinzin. Danzin. We call it in Tibetan dak zin. Dak means self, but in this case we intend it as, or denzin. Den means reality, which we intend as inherently existent reality. Zin means to grasp. We grasp at inherent existent reality. That's the root of our suffering. So, what's the rule to eliminate one state of mind? What do we need to generate? A directly opposite mode of apprehension, a directly opposite state of mind. And the state of mind which is the root of our suffering is the grasping at inherent existence. The understanding of interdependence is not the opposite to it. Indirectly, yes, it's an antidote, but it's not a direct antidote. Okay? So what is the direct opposite mind to the mind which says the book exists inherently? The mind that understands the book is interdependent helps, but it's not enough. What is the direct opposite mind? The book does not exist inherently. It's empty of inherent existence. Lacks inherent existence. It's three ways of saying the same thing. Okay? But this is the mind which is directly opposite to the mind that grasps at inherent existence. So in order to eliminate the grasping at inherent existence, we must realize the mind that perceives the lack of inherent existence, that perceives the emptiness of inherent existence. So it's a negation to go against an affirmation, because the root of suffering is an affirmation So the opposition to an affirmation is a negation. The affirmation is, it is of inherent existence. What is the direct opposite? It is not of inherent existence. Okay? So, when we use the word emptiness, shunyata in Sanskrit, tongpanyi in Tibetan, sometimes there is a wrong understanding when we say all phenomena are of the nature of emptiness or all phenomena are empty. First of all, when I say that something is empty, I mean that it exists. If I say, let's take for instance the book, and I say the book is empty. What am I saying, first of all? That the book exists. If the book didn't exist, it could not be empty. Okay? So whenever we say something is whatever, it means it exists. So because the book is empty, first of all, the book exists. That's why it can be empty. Second, if it is empty, it is empty of something. Okay? So the important question is, it is empty of what? Sometimes there is a wrong understanding of emptiness because we focus too much on the part of the emptiness and not on of what it is empty. We focus too much on the negation and we forget to ask what is the object of negation. Shantideva said, Tak pengola marek partingu mit zingmain in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. Tak pengola marek partingu mit zingmain. Without entering in contact with the designated object, it is not possible to apprehend its known existence. Without entering in contact with the designated object, it is not possible to apprehend its known existence. Without being able to imagine something, I can never know that that does not exist. Okay? It's like if I come and I ask you, is there one Kangla Chudru Chebe Langchen here? Yes or no? Okay. If I give the translation, it means, is there one elephant with 16-legged elephant here? Okay? No. Even if we make it more simple, is there an elephant in this room? Yes or no? Is there the statue of an elephant, is that an actual elephant? The painting of an elephant, is that an elephant? No, I'm asking about an elephant. I'm not asking about the painting of an elephant, okay? Is there an elephant in this room? Why? Well, how can you be sure that there is no elephant in this room? Because if there would be an elephant, it would be need to enter from a door. We need to open the main door. Sure, he will be smelling. Sure, it will be taking quite some space. There is no place for the elephant to hide around us. So sure, we would be seeing the elephant, and we cannot see the elephant. So because we can imagine how it would be if an elephant was here, we can say that there is no elephant. Okay? The only reason we can say that there is no elephant is because we can imagine how would it be if an elephant was here. So we can only make a negation when we have cleared the object of negation. Okay? So, without entering in contact with the designated object, the elephant in the room, we cannot apprehend its non-existence. Okay? The lack of the elephant in the room. The room is empty of an elephant. Similar to that, when we say that the book is empty, it's empty of what? It's empty of inherent existence. The book does not exist inherently, autonomously, independently, objectively. Okay? How would be the book if the book would exist inherently? It will be always a book the same for everyone. Does any book exist like that? No. So the book lacks inherent existence. The book is empty of inherent existence. But even though we know that the book lacks inherent existence, how does it appear to us? As if it was of inherent existence, okay? That's why we need to generate a direct opposite mode of apprehension. So how do we do that? We need to meditate. We need to familiarize ourselves. We need to meditate not on the concept of emptiness, but on emptiness, which are two different things. Okay? And this is a very subtle point here, and it's very important for us to make this distinction. Because otherwise I can meditate for a long time on the concept of emptiness, but it's just a concept. Beautiful concept, but it's just a concept. So how do we do that? First thing, we sit down, we meditate a little bit, we bring our mind to a state of calm and concentration. Then we take one object. It can be an external object, an internal object, it can be our feelings, it can be our joy, it can be our suffering, it can be our body, it can be the book in front of us, it can be anything, okay? Let's start with the book in front of us. So we take the book in front of us, we look at the book, and we start analyzing. How does the book actually exist? What is the book? And as we analyze, we'll get to the conclusion. The book is nothing more, nothing less than a name, book, which brings concepts and values and functions and characteristics. So the book is nothing more, nothing less than a name book, which brings functions and characteristics attributed to a unity of parts. What are the parts? The pages, the cover, the letters, the words, and so on. Then I take the pages. Do the page exist independently of the name? No. What is the page? Is a concept, a name. Page attributed at a unity of parts. What are the parts? The upper part of the page, the lower part of the page, the front, the back, the ink, the paper, and so on. And like this we can go on and on. Okay? So first we take the book and we say the book does not exist independently of the value that is attributed to it. Book itself is nothing more, nothing less than a name. Okay? So, attributed at one unity of parts. Once I conclude the process of analysis, it can be short, medium, or long. Anyhow, once I do my own analysis, it's like if I have an equation and I go there summing all the parts until I get to the conclusion. Once I got to the conclusion, yes, the book does not exist inherently. Then I let the mind of analysis a little bit aside. Then I just observe the book in a very spontaneous way. And I let the book appear to me in the most natural way. And until the book appears to me, it doesn't take long, as if it is inherent. And I let the mind that grasps at it as being of inherent existence to appear also. So, when I grasp at the book as being of inherent existence and I recognize it within myself, that's why I say, aha, I catch you. That's not true. The book is not of inherent existence, even though it appears to me, look at that. It looks like it's there independently of everything else, but the book is nothing more, nothing less than a name with characteristics and functions being attributed at a union of parts. It is not as it appears. And then we go back with the analysis, applying the analysis on top of that mind that grasps it as being of inherent existence, until that mind fades. And the only thing that remains is the lack of inherent existence. And then we remain single-pointed meditation on the lack of inherent existence, nothing more. Here there is one point which is a bit delicate to explain, but let's try to explain in this way. The book, at the same instant, how many possibilities exist right now here? The same object. Countless. Okay? Not to say infinite, we can say countless possibilities. Alright? So, when I call it book, what am I doing? I'm taking one possibility and choosing between the countless possibilities. I'm choosing one, I'm saying, okay, this is a book. In my ignorance, I don't see that there are countless possibilities, and I just see the book as a book, and that's all. So, the meditation would be similar to the fact of recognizing that there are countless possibilities and I am just choosing one of the countless possibilities. But are we able to see at the same time the object as a book and at the same time see that there are countless possibilities? Actually not. In the moment that we see that there are countless possibilities, we lose the perception of book. We are not able to put one and all together at the same time. If it is countless things, it cannot be the book. We lose that ability. This is because we live as we are ignorant. We are not yet a Buddha. We live in a dualistic reality, okay, where we have relative and absolute, where or is in one way or is in another. We are not able to put the two things together. We are not able to perceive that it is a book and at the time it is so many other things. We cannot conceive the two things together in our mind. Okay? That's why in this process, when I understand that it lacks inherent existence, we are not able to see the book and at the same time to see that it lacks inherent existence. We are not able to put the two things together. So when we reach the lack of inherent existence, simply the book disappears from our mind. There is nothing else to perceive than the lack of inherent existence. Because we are not able to conceive the two things together. Why? Because the book appears to us as being of inherent existence. We grasp at it as being of inherent existence. And even though conceptually we can understand that a book exists in an interdependent way, that it lacks inherent existence, when we go to perceive it as lacking of inherent existence, we are not able to put together the book at the same time. So what's the only object of meditation? The lack of inherent existence. And we should remain that as long as we can. When we get out of that meditative state, there is the book again. And how does the book appear to us? As being of inherent existence, but we know it's not. This is when the next verse comes and says, in the period between sessions, be a creator of illusion. In the period between the sessions, be aware that reality does not exist in an inherent way as it appears to exist. So be like the one that is dreaming and is aware that it is a dream. Be like the one that is seeing an illusion, but he is the one that made the illusion, so he knows that it is an illusion. Okay? So, this is the process of meditation on this. Then, to realize the emptiness itself, it takes a gradual process of meditating it in 3 different levels that are explained here in the text, as it says. Consider all phenomena as dreams. This is the part that refers to meditate on the emptiness of phenomena around us, all phenomena. Examine the nature of unborn awareness, which means meditate on the emptiness of the mind. I would like just to make one short example to understand it a bit better. When we look at the book, we see that a book is nothing more, nothing less than a name attributed at a unity of parts. Okay? Until here we got it, right? Then, what happened is that, does the book exist independently of the mind that perceives it as a book? I make another example. They made one experiment one time in Brazil where they took one wooden chair in the middle of a forest where were the indigenous people that had never seen a chair before. They would pass by day and night and they would not see a chair. The form and shape, was it appearing to their eyes or not? Yes, but they didn't have the concept. So what happened? They did not attribute the meaning, so there was no chair. There was just some pieces of wood there, that's all. Okay, maybe pieces of wood that we have never seen put in this way together. What are they? Then suddenly someone went there, sit on it. Ah, this is to sit. Someone teach, someone share, someone explain. And then now what happened? We have a mental image for it. So it becomes a chair. Okay. So the point is that the chair only exists independent of the mind that perceives the chair. Is this clear? Otherwise, it's just a bunch of pieces of wood together. It's like if we take a Tibetan letter. The letter Om only exists because there is a mind perceiving these many little lines as Om. Otherwise, they're just many little lines together. Okay? Or we make one straight line, that's an I. No, very important line, straight line. I. Okay? If we see I am, no? The I. You know, one little line, look how powerful, no? So, it's nothing more, nothing less than a value that we attribute to the little straight line. And we give so much value to it. But it's just nothing more than one straight line to which we attribute this meaning, which we say I. So what happens is that it doesn't exist as an I if we do not attribute such value to it. Okay? So, similar to that, what happens is that the book doesn't exist independently of the mind that perceives the book. Is this clear? Yes, no, more or less. Because what happens is that if I take out the mind that perceives the book, will the parts continue to be here? Or in the moment that I don't have anymore the mind that perceives the book, everything disappears? It's still here, but it's not a book. It can be something else. So, what happens is that the book, as it is a concept attributed to a union of parts, the book only exists in dependence of the mind that perceives the book. Okay? But now, the mind that perceives the book, does it exist independently of the book? In other words, the mind that perceives the book, can it exist where the book doesn't exist? For example, the mind that perceives the elephant, can it exist where there is no elephant? No. What we can exist is the mind that perceives the mental image of an elephant. We can perceive the image of an elephant, but we cannot perceive the actual elephant. Okay? The actual experience of an elephant, the mind that perceives an elephant, not the image of an elephant, can only exist where there is an elephant, right? So the mind that perceives the book exists in dependence of the book. But the book exists in dependence of the mind that perceives the book. So it's like the question, who came first, the egg or the chicken, no? So basically, it's because they are interdependent. The reality, external reality does exist, but external reality does not exist independently of internal reality. And internal reality, the mind, does exist, but it does not exist independently of the external reality, object of perception. In the dream, you perceive the elephant as real, the mind sees it as real, but it is not real. The mind is very real. Our perception very often is completely wrong. Okay? It's wrong in the sense that things appear to us in a way different from what they are. So if in the dream the elephant appears to me as being a real elephant, that's a wrong perception. The aspect that I see the elephant of the dream is a correct perception. It's wrong when I see it as a real elephant. Okay? But the important point that I want to bring here is that the mind exists in dependence of the object of perception, and the object of perception exists in dependence of the mind. Which means the book exists in dependence of the mind that perceives the book, and the mind that perceives the book exists in dependence of the book. Okay. Huh? No, wait. One thing is the mind. Another thing is the specific mind thought that perceives the book. Okay? I'm talking about the specific mind moment that is perceiving the book. I'm not talking about the mind generally speaking. Okay? So, here, This brings us to the second step, which is meditating on the lack of inherent existence of the mind. Because there is the danger of saying, okay, phenomena do not exist inherently, but the mind creates everything and the mind exists by itself. The mind also does not exist inherently. That is when we say, examine the nature of unborn awareness. Is the second part, which is meditating on the emptiness of the mind. It's also called Mahamudra. The remedy itself is released in its own place. What is the remedy? Emptiness. Emptiness itself is released in its own place, which means meditate on the emptiness of emptiness. The lack of inherent existence is empty of inherent existence. Emptiness, it is of the nature of emptiness. Emptiness itself does not exist in an autonomous, independent, intrinsic way. In other words, the emptiness of the book, does it exist or not? Is the book of the nature of emptiness or not? Yes. So does the emptiness of the book exist? Yes. But does it exist out in an independent way, or it exists independence of the book? Independence of the book. If the book would not exist, would the emptiness of the book exist? No. If the emptiness of the book would not exist, would the book exist? Also not, okay? Because the book could not exist if it would not be empty. There is a saying, let me see if I remember. Kang la tompa nirungwa tela tamche rungwargyur. For whatever emptiness is right, everything else is right. Which means, for whatever emptiness is right, anything that can be empty, it can exist. If something cannot be empty, it cannot exist, basically. It's quite deep, delicate, this verse, but how do you know if something exists or not? Is it empty of inherent existence? Then it exists. Okay. Anyhow, the point here is that we need to meditate on these three levels. First, we meditate on the lack of inherent existence of external phenomena and the self. Then we go on the meditating on the lack of inherent existence of the mind. Then we meditate on the lack of inherent existence of emptiness itself. Place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. Which means also, use the basis of your path, the realization of emptiness. Remember, that's the most important thing on the path, is to realize the true nature of reality. So, place the essence of the path on the nature of the base of all. What's the nature of the base of all? Emptiness. So place the essence of the path in the realization of the true nature of reality. And then, in the period between sessions, be a creator of illusion. When you stop the process of meditation, always remember that even though reality appears as being of inherent existence, actually it is not. Okay? Not exactly. It's mostly taught because you need to analyze it, how it is, how it's not, and so on and so on. Then you reach when you realize that the book lacks inherent existence, then you remain in that conclusion of the lack of inherent existence as a state of mind in which you realize the lack of inherent existence as a thought. Okay, is an inner. There is no image, there is no visualization. The object of perception is the lack of inherent existence. So the lack of inherent existence exists, right? So it is not a thought. The lack of inherent existence is not a thought. It's the object of a mental thought. It's a mental image. You start by perceiving it as a mental image. Okay? We have 6 senses. One of the senses is the sense of mind. The mind perceives mental images. Okay? When you are perceiving the bed where you will sleep this night, okay, can you think about the place where you will go to sleep tonight? You are not what is you're perceiving. It's not it is a thought, but the object of perception is a mental image of the bed. It's not a thought of the bed. It's called a mental image of the bed. It's a picture that not necessarily need to be a picture in the form of shape and color and form. Okay? I can understand, I can have a picture, I can have a mental image of impermanence. I can have a mental image of sadness. I can have a mental image of joy. I can have a mental image of a book, which has the concept of the book. What is a book? And not necessarily I need to see the image of a book. So when we talk about emptiness, I can understand what is the lack of inherent existence, but this doesn't mean I need to have a picture in the sense of an actual image with form and shape and color of what is emptiness. It's nothing to do with that. It's just a mental image of the concept. And I fix my mind on that aspect. I don't know. I cannot say it is feeling. It's a mental state, okay, free from the five senses. We are not perceiving any of the five senses at that moment. And the only object of perception is the mental image of the lack of inherent existence, of emptiness. Okay? So it's a mental state where the only thing that you perceive is that concept. So if for you it's easier to understand it calling it a sensation, let's say okay, but it's not exactly a sensation because we have very precise words normally. No? Sensation, we have three types of sensation, pleasure and suffering, and it's not that. Okay? It is a mental perception. That's what it is. Now, there are three types of sensation. This will go into another subject. Okay? We have sensation of pleasure, sensation of suffering, and neutral sensation. Okay, this is another subject. The fact is that when we meditate on emptiness, it is an inner state, a mental state, okay, that it's not from the five consciousness of the five senses. In this moment, we are not supposed to be seeing, listening, touching, tasting, or smelling. It's only the object of perception is the mental image of the lack of inherent existence, the mental image of emptiness. It's the result of the process before. That's why we do the process before. So we do the whole analysis, then we get to the actual conclusion, and we remain in the actual conclusion. And then we remain in that state. Later, it can become, when we realize it, it is when it's a direct experience, which is not anymore conceptual. Which is called a direct valid cognition. A mental direct valid cognition of it. Okay? So this is more or less, which is the process of meditation. The important thing is that to remember that when we meditate on emptiness, there is a difference between meditating on emptiness and meditating on the concept of emptiness. In order for us to meditate on emptiness, we must see ignorance. We must let the mind that grasps at inherent existence to appear, and then we generate the opposite mind so that that mind fades away. Okay? So this is one very short thing is that one of the ways of checking if we are meditating correctly, if the more we meditate on emptiness, the more we feel connected to reality and we feel that everything is interdependent and connected and so on, it means we are meditating in the correct way. If by meditating on emptiness we feel that nothing exists and everything is just the nothingness and nothing exists, then we are going in the wrong direction. Okay. So, just to conclude, I like just to remember that this subject, it's a very, very, very important subject. It's the key of all, actually, emptiness. But at the same time, it is very complex and very profound. It's not something obvious. It's not for nothing that in monasteries like Sera, monks study for 4 years only about emptiness. And it's 4 years of study, doing 11 months a year, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. It's not like one weekend every month, for 4 years. So, it is something very deep. And one of the reasons why it takes so long is because our concepts that are outside of our own paradigm. And we understand, then we don't understand again. Then we understand, then we don't understand. Then we need to go back again and again. Like, it happened many times that I read the same text for 15, 20 times, then suddenly, I got something. Then there are the beautiful times that we get something and it remains. The other times that we get something so beautiful, then it's not there anymore. Where is it gone? Then we need to generate it again. So this is a natural process. We need to repeat it again and again and again and again and again and again, because it's changing completely our paradigm. It's seeing reality in a completely different way. And we are not used to it. Our mind is completely conditioned in another way. So it takes time, it takes experience, it takes constancy. And just to conclude with one phrase from one text which says, the simple fact of doubting inherent existence is already a punch in the face of ignorance. The simple fact of understanding that we live within a paradigm and starting to question our own paradigm, it's already a punch in the face of ignorance. Okay? Then sure, ignorance is strong. One punch is not enough, but we need gradually to make this change. Yes? Yes, that's why the first step in order to meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the mind is learning to observe the mind. That's the first step. Okay? There is one text where it explains very clearly. It's called The Root of the Mahamudra by Panchen Lobsang Chokyi Gyaltsen. Whereas the first process is for us learning to see and observe the mind, which is something quite complex by itself. And only when we learn how to observe our mind, then we can meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the mind. Okay? Because conceptually, we can enter into this loop of the mind looking at the mind and the mind looking at the mind. Basically, trying to make it really simple, one of the aspects important to understand of the emptiness of the mind is not the emptiness of the mind, it's a different way of observing it than when we observe the emptiness of the glass or the emptiness of the table or the book or whatever. Because the difference is that the mind exists in a dependence with its object of perception. It's like if we need to look from the other side. When I'm looking at the book doesn't exist inherently because it depends on the observer. Okay? The mind does not exist inherently because it depends on the object of perception. It's like going from the other side, looking from the other side. Is it difficult, as you said, to perceive, to understand the emptiness of the mind? It is very difficult. That's why it comes later, no? And it is difficult, first of all, as I said, because first we need to know how to observe the mind, which by itself is not so simple. The other aspect, I stayed myself with a loop of this doubt for around 2.5 years, in which I was thinking, how can the mind exist on the basis of the imputation of the name? Very simple the question, because if the mind depends on the imputation of the name to exist, okay, as the book doesn't exist independently of the name book, if the mind doesn't exist independently of the name mind, who is giving the imputation of the name to the mind? If it's someone else's mind, then I have a problem. I cannot exist independently of someone else, right? So this is not feasible. If it's my own mind, then this means that I have one mind that perceives my mind. And the mind that perceives the mind, what happened to it? It needs another mind that perceives the mind. And like this, we can go into an infinite loop of the mind that perceives the mind and the mind that perceives the mind. We had a long discussion about this the last course, with it last summer, with the text of the questions and answer of Lama Tsongkhapa and Panchen Lobsang Chokyi Gyaltsen. But the point is that here it's not a matter of the mind that perceives the mind. It's the matter that the interdependence of the mind is not between the mind and who is perceiving the mind, but it's between the mind and its object of perception. Okay? So it's like if we look at two things relating to each other, One exists independence of the other, and we need to change the perspective. I don't know if this is clear. Which is like here and there. Here exists independence of there. There exists independence of here. Both here and there do not exist independently. Okay? So why here exists? Because there exists. And there cannot exist without here. Why there exists? Because here exists. Okay? And there cannot exist without here. Reality, object of perception, can only exist because there is the mind perceiving. And the mind can only exist because there are the objects of perception. So they are mutually dependent. It's through this that we can understand the lack of inherent existence of the mind. Okay? I'm talking about the mind. Okay? So, and at any level. So basically, it is a very complex subject. This is also what I wanted to say before when I said that it takes a long time. No? It is a process that our objective is to realize the lack of inherent existence, but actually the true objective is not to have anymore the grasping at inherent existence that is creating our selfishness, that is creating our anger, attachment, fear, and so on and so on. That's the true objective. Okay. So now we stop here, otherwise we need to start meditating on the emptiness of our stomach. So, just one thing just to remember, in the same way that it says that to only doubt inherent existence is a punch in the face of ignorance, it says that meditating on emptiness, reflecting upon the lack of inherent existence, we accumulate more merits by doing that than making offerings, as many offerings as the grains of sand of the Ganges to all the Buddhas. So as many offerings as the grains of sand of the Ganges to each and every Buddha, we accumulate more merit by meditating on emptiness. Okay, this just say the positive energy generated from that is so strong. Yes, if you really do in a sincere, real way, once you touch emptiness, it brings this energy much more than. Okay? So if we are not touching it completely, okay, not all the sands of the Ganges, but a good part of it, okay? Jetsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar chinle chochur gepada losan tempe drume sasum gim drove munsel tatu ne gyurchi Nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin Ninsen taktu delekpe koncho sumki jingilo koncho sumki ngodrup tsol koncho sumki trashishu. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.